Oh, can you hear me now? Please let me know if you can hear me. Okay. Can you hear me now, please? Oh, great. So I'll just run through what I said earlier. So I said you're welcome to today's webinar series. And today we'll be talking about the lessons learned and the way forward from Post-COP27. And today we have 5 amazing speakers that will be having discussions together. And they are Olumide Idowu, Damilola Hamid, Carlos Shankar, and Femi Omodi. And then the last person is Miss Jane. So I'll just talk about what EcoCarbon is and what we do. So at EcoCarbon and Commodity Exchange, our vision is to be the leading climate finance company in Africa that supports corporate and government bodies to actualize the net zero goal. We use technology to drive voluntary carbon aggregation and scale up projects that are reducing emissions, supporting livelihood, and protecting nature. So the United Nations Climate Change Conference, the COP27, recently ended with a breakthrough agreement to provide loss and damage funding for vulnerable countries hit hard by climate change. So aside from that, the COP27 set in motion to have some plans listed out to be achieved. And some of them are, we have a 5-year plan to promote climate technology solution in developing countries, to mitigate plans to scale up mitigation ambition and implementation, to launch 25 new collaborative actions in 5 key areas, which are power, road, transportation, steel, hydrogen, and agriculture. And then to raise about 3.1 billion plan to ensure everyone on the planet is protected by early warning systems within the next 5 years, and so on. So that's the basic introduction. So now I'll leave it to the speakers to do a brief introduction of themselves. So I will go first with Ms. Femi Omodi. So after you go, Olumide, you go in. So thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Bella, for setting such a context for this conversation. My name is Feni Omondi. I'm from Kenya. I'm a program management specialist with 5 experience in the agricultural development sector. I've worked pretty much throughout the agricultural value chain, right from production to processing to regional trade in Eastern Africa. And so I quite understand the landscape here as far as policies concerned, but also the political economic ecosystem here in Kenya, or in Eastern Africa, broadly speaking. I'm also a monitoring evolution research and learning consultant, and I specialize in food security consulting, climate action and advocacy, as well as food security. So I'm really looking forward to interacting with you guys, and I want to also bring my perspectives from what I learned in COP and some of the key takeaways and how we can really leverage those opportunities and those, for example, funding opportunities that were outlined in COP to propel us towards net zero. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Fanny. Ode, please, you can the ground now.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Olumide Idowu, and I'm from Nigeria, living in Lagos. I'm the Executive Director for International Climate Change Development Initiative, and I also double as Executive Coordinator for African Initiative for Climate Change. It's good to be here, and I look forward to the conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Olumide. Olumide and Fenny, we're glad to have you here. Thank you so much. So the next person is Damilola Balogun. We'd like to have you introduce yourself briefly. Thank you.
All right, my name is Damilola Balogun. Thank you for the kind introduction. And of course, thanks for setting up this conversation at a crucial time such as this. I'm the founder and CEO of the Youth Sustainable Development Network, and I'm looking forward to learning and as well sharing my insights on today's conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Damilola. Yes, Jane, can we have you give your brief introduction? Okay. Hi, Jane, are you there? Hello? Okay, do we have Carlos on the call, please? Okay, while waiting for Jane and Carlos to join us, so I would like the three speakers that we have on ground to still tell us the highlights of the lessons learned at COP27. So Fanny, would you mind going first?
Sure, I don't mind going first. I think,
okay.
Like you said, Becca, there was important steps made in terms of increasing commitment, in terms of financing, financial commitment to cushion countries that are most hit by the impact of climate change. So we saw an increasing number of parties committing to channel funding to developing countries mostly to help them adapt and even mitigate the impacts of climate change. So while that was really impressive, I think one of the things that kept coming up a lot at COP that I saw was the question around how do we access this funding? So because we know that there's a lot of bureaucracy around getting the funding to the right people. And so I'm glad that UNFCCC have made a commitment to also publicly make these funding channels or funding opportunities available on the website, and hopefully people can actually get to access information and on how to get the funding and really get proper guidance. So I think that was great. The other thing that I felt was a gap was there was a lot of conversation around COP27 being an implementation COP, which is great. So people saying, oh, we need to stop all the talk and start acting. That is great. And one thing that I questioned, one question that kept coming up in my head was, I mean, we have all these great things happening, but then why are we not making any progress really? And so I realized that there is, I think, the major gap, and I see this even in projects here in Kenya, there is a major gap in terms of collaboration and knowledge sharing. So really, the problem or the issue is that we should not concern ourselves with kind of coming up with new innovations, new initiatives. We already have great things working out there. So we are not here to reinvent the wheel. So I think the gap essentially has been in the lack of creating platforms to share the knowledge, share what's working, share what's not working, and how we can improve on those. So I think two key things, yeah, the increase in the financial commitment that people are making, but also most importantly, the need for collaboration and the need for sharing knowledge and the need for using that to accelerate our learning curve and position ourselves to on the path to on the right track to achieving all these goals that we're putting forth.
Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, so what stood out for me from what Fanny said was the financial commitment and the fact that people should not hoard necessary information from individuals so that they will know the appropriate things to do and things not to do. So thank you very much. Damilola Balogun, I'll have you share some of the lessons you learned and, with us. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much again for the opportunity. So for me, there are two important lessons that I learned as far as COP27 is concerned, on two aspects. One is for the African community as a whole, and number two is for youth participation when it comes to climate justice. So first, start with not just African countries, but of course, developing countries. Moving backward to COP26, when the whole conversation around providing loss and damage to mitigate the effect of climate change by developed countries to developing countries, it was a bit strange. And so a lot of the conversation could not really drive proper engagement moving forward. So I think a major goal or a major achievement as far as COP27 is concerned is the fact that developing countries ever in the history of conference of party, particularly this the 27th session, it's clear that the provision of the loss and damage fund is a major progress as far as achieving the issue of climate change or addressing the impact of climate change is concerned, which I think it's a great achievement. And on the other part, for young people, of course, we're happy as young people to get to see some of our pressing concerns and need reflect in the final decision text of the conference, which is now known as the Sharm el-Sheikh Implementation Plan. So again, we are able to see the first ever youth and children pavilion set up in COP27, which is of course a huge progress. And not only that, the executive secretary of the UNFCCC also in his closing remarks emphasized on the fact that young people were able to lead and lend their voices and even holding their leaders accountable, which of course is to indicate that young people are not only saying anything anymore, they are as well taking on the role and of course leading the chance to build a sustainable and a resilient future. Again, all of these things clearly reflect that there is a win as far as the African continent is concerned, there is a win as far as developing countries is concerned, and there is a win for young people as we are leading to build sustainable and resilient future. So those were like my major highlights and key lessons for COP27. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, now that Damilola has dived into the next question that I was about asking, so I would like Olumide to answer both the highlights that he got from the COP27 and also talk about what the youths can tap from the highlighted programs. So in order to, after the COP27, what the youths can tap from it. So I'd like you to just talk briefly about both of them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think my first sister that actually started this conversation actually did a very good outcome from COP27. I think somebody's, maybe you should mute your mic, please. Somebody's mic is disturbing. So, can you hear me now? Okay, good. So I just want to also put some perspective on some key conversation that actually happened during COP27. And my thought is that our parties could have reached an agreement on the gradual phase out of all fossil fuels, but they only reached a core-only agreement. I'm very sorry to say that a lot of people are talking about funding for loss and damage. But when it comes to reality for Africa, we need to understand that this issue of fossil fuel is a big conversation. And that is where I leverage my conversation on, because it is high time for us to start looking at what kind of languages are we using in negotiating when we get to the negotiation table, so that it will not look as if COP27 is a Christmas that we attend every year. And if you look at the role of young people, you can see a lot of motivated young individuals that actually come together and put a lot of conversation that is affecting developing countries. And I'm even also very happy to see the relationship between the European Union and European youth and the African youth coming together and talk about how we can actually demand our government to listen to the issue and the problem that we are facing as a country and as a continent. And the issue of on adaptation, we can also see that partially we actually acknowledge the unique requirements and the situation of Africa, from the financial standpoint, is actually something that it was very clear. It was mentioned of Africa in the financial section that we have gotten support and a commitment to make a decision on loss and damage from during this COP27, and even the CDM, which is very, very CMA, which is very, very, very important. And when we also look at the area of energy and just transition, it's also something that is a call to action for an African continent, that the so-called just transition, is a pathway for us to transit and to decide where we want to be as a continent and what kind of negotiation we are talking about. And this actually helps us to also indicate the kind of decision for just transition that African leaders that are looking towards when they are negotiating. And this decision actually made clear that the approach will take an account, factors that relate to energy, society, the workforce, and other factors. And if all of us read the Article 29 very well, we'll be able to understand the situation of the just transition and the energy and just transition that we're talking about. So that also is another standout for me to see how we can make sure that our just transition is not just in the conversation, just in the word, but in a just transition. Let me put it in a just way, that people will be able to see the reflection down in their country or continent. And we move to the conversation on the mitigation. And as we know, this is the main objective of UNFCCC negotiation, that have remained to be cutting non-carbon emission, like the conversation of methane and exploring solution to global warming. And you see, this conversation lies down with people that actually have the understanding and intellectual of how to negotiate on the mitigation track. And this has put pressure on poor nations and the pillar of their economy, because mitigation lies within technology. And Africa as a continent, do we really have the capacity for technology? And do we really have that climate smart solution when it talks to the likes of agriculture? We probably grow and see how this carbon emission attracts more attention. So a lot of conversation on mitigation also stand out, where we need to start looking at what is our capacity, what is our strength as an African continent to actually speak on mitigation and technology transfer. Then a lot of the two speakers, Dami and my other sister, have spoken about the loss and damage. And we know that the Sharm el-Sheikh has reached a significant milestone, like my sister said, with the operationalization of the Santiago network, on loss and damage. It's a plus for Africa, but how do we translate this to the so-called COP of implementation in order for us to provide timely technical assistance to Africa? The technical assistance to Africa is cool, but how do we make sure that it's not only limiting to technical assistance for African countries that is in need? We need a clear criteria that is going to help us, to network membership, establish a strong implementation strategy that will work for you and I, work for the people, for the vulnerable people, and work for different host institutions across the value chain. Because when we talk about loss and damage and we talk about technical assistance, then we need to talk more on how is it going to affect or is going to be implemented in the local level. And this criteria should actually take into account in a regional level and Africa as a continent as well. So there's a lot that has happened during COP. And let me also talk about majorly on the issue of climate finance. If you look at climate finance, you look as if Africa is begging for money. But let me tell you, we have the intellectual, we have the expertise, we have what it takes to implement actions and strategy in Africa. We just need to look how this decision put in our COP27 and the CMA made a specific mention in Africa that the only thing our financial mechanism, the way we respond to finance, is supposed to be in a way whereby we'll be able to let them know that this financing is not just a corrupt finance, but it's a finance for vulnerable people, finance for loss and damage, particularly finance that require that we know about the requirement and how the condition of that finance looks like. We don't want finance in borrowing. We don't want finance in loan. We want finance because we are the one that's been eating hard when it comes to the issue of climate change. And we continue to say this. So we must be careful to assess, how the law of supply based on the developed country and demand will affect us, and we also talk about the carbon pricing, which is also part of the climate finance. Remove this person. Sorry about that. We just want to cause a lot of problems for us. So, as I was saying, and we also talk about the carbon pricing, as these projects are no transfer from the CDM, climate the CDM to the new mechanism under the Article 6. So it is very important that when, as a city, as an African continent, when we are talking about the climate finance, we should understand how this finance is, going to work for us, and how this finance is going to be something that is going to work for the people and the vulnerable. So for me, I would say that it's very, very important. And I will end on these notes to also mention some of the key action that was mentioned to us on the capacity building and technology. And the technology and science and the CTCN have already, focused on implementation. And this implementation is for us to see how technological transfer can help Africa to achieve our action. And that is why they set up the Technology Mechanism Committee, the CTCN, and how are they going to relate and connect to the support that the technology transfer we're talking about in Africa is going to happen. Because nobody now, presently in Africa, as a continent, should work in isolation. So we need to create a clear connection between the financial institutions into Africa, and we need to also have a vision of what we actually need to, when it comes to capacity building, when it comes to technological transfer and implementation of the action of our climate change, climate empowerment, which we know that is still in danger because of due of lack of finance support. So we are not begging for funding. We are actually telling them that we need funding to work and to implement those projects that people are lacking from energy, lacking from technology, lacking from energy transition, lacking from transportation. And all this we are supposed to achieve. So I just want to say that all these components are what we are looking at. And what stood out for me was the issue of the fossil fuel. Are we still going to go back to COP28 to talk about it? Is a question to all of us. Thank you very much for giving me this time. Thank you.
Hi, that was amazing. Thank you so much, Olumide. So Olumide talked about vision, having a vision of what we want to use the funds to do. And the fact that Africans should not come with the mindset that we're coming to beg for those financial commitments. It's our right to actually get those commitments, to be able to implement all these plans that has been slated. So Feni, I'd like to know your own perspective about the sustainable approach for tackling these pledges that the stakeholders made at the conference. So please, could you please take the floor?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much, Olumide, for being very, very well on that. I completely agree with the points that you have outlined. I think I wanted to weigh in a bit on the technology transfer. I think one of the things that I feel has been missing year on year, COP after COP, has been this component of we're thinking about technology transfer, we're thinking about boosting our financial commitment. I mean, the global north boosting their financial commitment as far as loss and damage, or whichever way you like to call it, is concerned. But I think we're really missing a critical piece here. I think it's time that we change our mindset and we change the narrative around how we look at financing, climate financing, and how we look at technology transfer, right? I think Olumide touched a bit on it. And what I'm driving at is that it's high time we started thinking about Africa. We started being a lot more Africa-centered as we think about financing, as we think about governance structure, as we think about how to remove the hurdles to access these resources. Why I'm saying this is that it has felt like, in many cases, it has felt like some of these commitments have led to some sort of strategies and even solutions being imposed. And while the solutions are great and they've worked somewhere in other parts of the world, I think it's important that we look at it from a perspective of is this important for us? Because we have to admit that our social, economic, and even political climates are different, right? And so it's important not to just scale solutions and impose solutions just for the sake of imposing them. It's important to question and examine if the situation, if the solutions and the strategies really are indeed aligning or aligning with, for example, the needs of each country. And the other that I've seen, or that at least so is, I really got frustrated at some point. This was my first COP, and so at some point I really got frustrated because I've been following other COPs in the past, and really, like Olumide said, I think we keep talking about the same thing every time, and so it really gets me frustrated that we are still circling around the same issue over and over again. I think the gap there, though, has been we do not look inward and say, as Africans, what are solutions that have been born on this continent? What are the solutions that have been tested on this continent? Because they are. And what are solutions that are actually workable and scalable that we can put on the table and say, hey, we think we have our solutions. And even if you bring the funding, we think this is this is an effective way, or these are like some of the very key solutions and strategies that we've seen working that we think the funding could be channeled to. So kind of merging funding. I mean, we're happy that the funding commitment is going up, but then we really want this funding commitment to be merged or to align with our needs, solutions that work for us, and not just coming to impose what has worked elsewhere. Because sometimes I was part of or I witnessed how's it called, a protest around, and it was no gas, do not gas Africa. And the thing is that the underlying protest is that the reason for I mean the what really propels, for example, the use of fossil fuel and drilling all this and putting up all these fossil fuel plants and pipelines in Africa. You see that, and the real issue there is Africa is being positioned, or has been positioned in the past, as the source of energy for the rest of the world. And so when we say, for example, we want to come and bridge the energy poverty gap by drilling more, putting up more fuel, fossil fuel plants, then I think we have to rethink, is it something that's going to work for us? Is it going to benefit us really? So it comes back to the same point of, can we just look inward as young people and look around? A lot of indigenous knowledge, there's a lot of things that have worked in the past. And I mean, some of them may not work, may not be practical right now, but I think they're like ways we can innovate and make them work, right? Things that have been tested and tried, and things that can be scaled in Africa, and really share that with the rest of the countries in Africa. So I think I just wanted to weigh on that. Yeah.
I think she's muted. Maybe she's talking and she's muted.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Fanny. Thank you so much. Because of the time, I'll have Damilola Balogun just talking about his own perspective of the sustainable approaches for tackling these pledges briefly before we go into the question and answer. Thank you, Damilola.
All right. Thank you very much again for this opportunity. And just as the two panelists have expanded their thoughts on this, I will just be coming on the angle of two essential things. So it's a known principle under the international human rights law that every country is meant to respect, fulfill, and protect human rights issues within their respective countries. That is a tried principle under the international law and development. And it is also clearly stated in some jurisdictions that certain human rights, particularly climate change, is expanded to be interpreted to revolve around rights to life. And of course, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights expressly guaranteed rights to sustainable environment as a human right. So clearly, this premise is just to emphasize the need and the urgent explanation that climate change is an issue that revolves around human rights. And so action needs to be taken, not just only at the international level, the regional and the national level. And so on my own view, moving with the pledges, in as much as it's a human rights concern, particularly for every citizen of every country, it is crucial that regardless of the climate finance that is meant to come from developed country, I share the perspective that as far as Africa is concerned, there is still a need to still put our resources, both human and natural resources, to drive change and to address these developmental issues, particularly in this conversation, climate change. So this is what it means to me. So, for example, we have the loss and damage fund that is already stated, and then the Nigerian government stated that they need about over 1.9 trillion US dollars to meet the energy transition plan by 2060. And so we also have to bear in mind that this loss and damage fund that is created by COP27, it is also clear that there are still technicalities to define what vulnerable countries are. So you have to be able to qualify to be able to access this fund at the end of the day. But on that end, seeing that this is a human rights issue, and then of course we need to still drive change at our own level within our own space, regardless of whatever support is coming, then I think we need to take action and get ready to position, particularly speaking from the angle of Nigeria. So for example, how do we want to position to access this fund to build our energy transition plan by 2060 and beyond? Again, this is just to emphasize the need of the fact that we have the issue of climate change on one hand, and so we also have to develop on the other hand. We need energy access. We don't have enough energy access as far as Nigeria is concerned. And so we are looking at climate change on the one hand. So at the end of the day, whatever policies, whatever resources we are gathering, pledges or no pledges, I think it's still important that we channel all of this to not only address the issue of climate, but also drive development. Because whether we like it or not, we still need to be developed as a continent, which we cannot do alone by just addressing the issue of climate. There is still a need to address problems revolving around socioeconomic inequalities, which is a major and a critical factor as far as climate change is concerned. So take, for example, there is a woman in Lagos here who is not able to feed properly, who does not have enough money, or a man in this case. So a lot of times we want to tell them about climate change, but these are not pressing needs as far as they are concerned. They probably don't even know the climate is changing. Sometimes they think the gods are angry with them. So a lot of time that issue is there. So it is clear that if we're able to, for example, address socioeconomic inequalities, talking about poverty and proper awareness and education, then we are strategically also addressing the issue of climate. And a lot of times I also share the perspective about the fact that when we have to depend on the global north in terms of funding, I know, yes, we are the least emitting continent, and so it's only just and equitable that we get funding to address this problem. But at the end of the day, the implication we don't see with all of these things is that we are being categorized as global south and global north. In the first place, who are these people naming us in this category? It clearly just shows that they are in charge of the finance. They give us when they want to give us, and then they give us a name that we tend to bear throughout the end of time. So before it was developing to developed countries, and then now from global north to global south. At the end of the day, the implication of all of these things still makes us very much dependent. And I think it's very crucial that we need to strive and we need to act like no one is ever going to come and help us, even if we know that we least emit. But at the end of the day, we still need our consensus. We need consensus from strong institutions like the African Union, as well as individuals and even politicians across the African continent to be able to make move and speak in one accord, to be able to drive change. And kudos to the African group of negotiators for constantly pushing the loss and damage fund as far as COP27 is concerned. These are clear examples we need to emulate moving forward. Thank you very much.
Yes, so thank you, Damilola, for shedding more light on that. So now I'll be going to a streamlined question now, and I would like Olumide and Damilola to share their thoughts on it. But first of all, I would like to go with Olumide Idowu. So Olumide, please, can I have you? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. So first of all, in Nigeria, do you think these goals are actually attainable? Do you think they are attainable?
Sorry, which goal are you talking about?
The ambitious goals that were stated by during the conference in Paris.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you're talking about Paris Agreement or you're talking about the outcome of COP, I can tell you what I just want to tell you is that every country have their own country specific when they were going to COP27. And in the case of Nigeria, our energy transition plan was very key for Nigeria. And we have the 7 sector. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, so I'm talking about, I said some countries have their own specific and key areas.
Hi, Olumide, I can hear you.
Yes, that they're actually looking at. And one of the key areas Nigeria was... Yes, I'm speaking. Are you the one not hearing me? Sorry, anybody that can hear me again can just identify, please. Dami, can you hear me?
Hi, Mr. Olumide, I can hear you loud and clear.
Oh, okay, good. So I'm just emphasizing on the priority of Nigeria during COP was majorly our energy transition plan, and also to look at the area of our, how do we want to support some key project that Nigeria is working on, most especially from the cleanup.
Okay, can I come in here because I can't really hear you clearly.
Oh, okay. I think it's your network. Okay, I think that means some people can hear me clearly. I can hear you too. Okay, I can hear you.
Okay. Hi, Becca.
So, you know, the Nigerian government...
sure we can hear him.
Okay. Good.
Maybe you should switch off your camera then, or your video.
Okay. So let me know if it's better now.
Better.
Okay. So, like I was saying, the Nigerian government are in partnership with the private sectors, and they made a lot of promises about from Nigeria will reach. They made a lot of promises that Nigeria will reach the net zero by 2060. You know, so that's what I'm asking you. That do you think these goals, these ambitious goals, are actually realistic? Do you think they're attainable, feasible?
Yeah, thank you very much.
And I know you've been talking. I know you've been explaining, but I couldn't hear you. Okay.
Yeah, all those goals, right? You just mentioned those goals, what you are referring to. But I can tell you that all those key points you just mentioned, they're very vital. And the only problem we have here is, we call it climate politics. Because if you look at it very well, our negotiators this year, one of our minister is one of the negotiators. In a couple of months, another government is going to take over. So what is going to happen to all the work he has been doing with the private sector? So that is why it is very important for a sustainable transition and making sure that the promises and the plan towards meeting our net zero emission, as we call it net zero, should be something that is very, very concrete. Because if it is the real net zero, then we should have a smooth transition between the governments that is going and the one that is coming. And also so that it can strengthen the partnership with the private sector. And if you look at the federal government in COP27, they also emphasize more on loss and damage, climate finance, desertification, and carbon markets. Those key areas were very, very prominent in the conversation. And every private sector that had a side event in COP27 in the Nigerian pavilion also make commitments in complementing the effort of the government. But what happened is, how do we have an enabling environment for these people to actually make sure that the so-called support and the so-called partnership and collaboration is well carried along in the process of political conversation? Because politics is one of the key problems of what we see today. Right from Paris agreements, we move to the Glasgow Pact. We move now to this Sendai. We have the Sharm el Sheikh implementation. All these plans, when you look at Nigeria, what we've said, what we've done in 2019, we talk about the energy, our nationally determined contribution. How effectively are we making sure that private sector is coming in effectively to work on this plan? How do we make sure that the transition from the government to another government, we complement the effort of the position that private sector is seeing themselves, and not leaving the civil society apart? Because the role of the people that are not so-called government is to complement the effort of what the government is doing, and the government make policies and give an enabling environment. So for me, I would say it is realistic if there's no political interference into this conversation of climate change. And I also say that it is not ambitious, because this is what we, let me call us, the vulnerable people, that we are the receiving end. We are looking forward to a full-time electricity, 24 hours electricity, good road, all those basic amenities that is stated in our national determined contribution, transportation, energy, waste management, and all of that civil sector. How do we make sure that they are being accessible to everybody? So the impact of private sector speaks a lot, but how do we make sure that their impact is reflecting the action on ground? And how do we make sure that we make them accountable, not to continue to, be a fossil fuel company, so that we will not fall in that so-called conversation of private sector, why they are sponsoring the fossil fuel company, and we are facing that problem without having green jobs that is providing a lot of opportunity for young people. So as we are making sure that we are collaborating with the private sector, we're also telling them that we need your transition plan, transition model, to make sure that we'll be okay with your product, with your support of the government. Because that is the end point of what we are talking about throughout every COP that we go for, moving from fossil fuel to renewable energy. But it's a process. But how do we make sure that that transition process is effective and just, is why we need the partnership and the collaboration of every stakeholders and sectors to see how it's going to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Olumide. Thank you so much for shedding more light on that, on the fact that collaboration with private sectors is going to, and lack of interference from political bodies is going to make this thing thrive better. So, Damilola, I would like you to talk about what's the impact of the youth, what actions the youth can take in Nigeria to actually enable these pledges to be implemented.
All right, thank you very much. That's a great question. In addition to everything that has been said today, I think young people have three things to do as far as addressing this issue of climate is concerned, and not just climate, also developmental issues. So first, I think education is key. I think young people can position themselves to create more awareness around the issue of climate and even energy access and even all other developmental issues to the larger population, because I strongly believe young people are the trustees of prosperity of every nation. And now more than ever, we hope, and I want to believe the Nigerian government will support it, young people to maximize impact on education around this important issue moving forward. So we have so many non-governmental organizations that are youth-focused. So how do we begin to drive the education around these issues such that people are able to bet the new reality the nation wants and also the global ecosystem wants. So again, young people are very crucial in this, and so it is important that they are critically empowered to as well push towards the advancement of knowledge around this issue, because when people know better, they are able to do better. So on that note, I think young people can support in the aspect of education. On the second aspect, I think policy recommendation. So now that COP27 has held, there would be several engagements leading up to COP28. And I think that what is essential again is that for young youth-led organizations having their annual conferences, having their annual workshop, it is crucial to begin to gauge some of these thoughts and ideas as far as the larger population is concerned. I think young people can do this. For example, this is what we do at the Youth Sustainable Development Network. And I know this is what the International Climate Change Development Initiative also does, engaging stakeholders to get policy recommendations that can be presented at high-level engagement, such as conference of parties. So I think young people can help in that aspect, coupled with research. And then finally, I think young people can as well begin to drive innovation, begin to drive action, because there is a need to build consciousness for action. If all of these targets are going to be met, we need to build the consciousness for action. So beyond all of the conversations, beyond all of the speaking, beyond all of the policy recommendation, it is crucial to begin to look forward to building action. And for sure, we want to build the next generation of young people, or the next generation of people that would be focused on implementation as much as they're focused on education and policy recommendations. So I think young people can be positioned to do all of these things to address these issues, whether or not it ties with the pledges or not. I think young people can do this, and then they can as well drive that change that we want in this space. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Damilare. So what stood out for me basically here is the fact that you said when young people are given exposure to information, once they have access to information, it empowers them to know what to do. Did you understand? So I feel that's the major thing in this part. So Jean, are you there? Please let me know if you're here. So you just answered the next question. Hello. Okay, so we lost her again. So I would like Feni to go on first with this one, then Damilare, Olumide, sequentially. So I'm talking about the UN's breakthrough on the agreement to provide loss and damage funding for vulnerable countries that were hit hard by the climate disaster. So how would the African community tap into the financial scheme open for mitigation and adaptation? Feni, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Thank you so much for the question.
The African community can tap into.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I think Damilola has spoken a bit about it, but I just wanted to reiterate the need for knowledge. I think especially as young people, we are very well connected. We have access to this kind of information in one way or the other. So I think it is upon us, right, as the most kind of interconnected or widely connected networked people to scout for this information, to be on the look of where this kind of information is published and how to access the funding. I feel that way because I see young people essentially as the bridge or as critical actors between, all these pledges, all these jargons, and all these, funding commitments that are placed out there, and the community, right? Because we do know where to get the information. We do know how to get the information. And so it's upon us to kind of act our part in bridging that gap. I think apart from being more proactive in accessing, in getting access to that information, I think that the other piece is active networking. And I will kind of roll that back to one of the points that I made initially, the need for cross-discipline or the need for cross-disciplinary collaboration, right? So we have all acknowledged here, and it's common knowledge that climate action or climate change is really multifaceted, and so we should address it as such. And so there is need to think just beyond, okay, I'm an agricultural expert. How can I, borrow knowledge from, for example, someone in infrastructure or in the energy sector, or for example, in activism, So I think there's also need for that kind of networking, because the more we network, the more we have this information, and the more we know various ways with which we can leverage and throw our weight behind, pressing for political leaders, or even the parties who made commitments to actually honor their commitments. So two things, yes, awareness, or rather being proactive in accessing this information, and two is networking. I think they're pretty related. And three, which is kind of the umbrella one, is playing our part in bridging the gap between what we do know or what we have access to and actual concrete actions, right? Because it's not just enough knowing that, okay, UNFCCC will publish all this funding information. Then what do we do with it? And so it's not just enough to end there. What we do with it? What do we do to help other people access it, especially vulnerable communities with which we work and from where we come?
So thank you so much. And lastly, I just want, because of our time, I just want Damilare to talk briefly on what he thinks the young people in Africa should watch out for. That is, what's the best way forward for those seeking climate justice? Just in 1 to 2 minutes, please.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Damilola, not Damilare. I made some mistakes, so it's fine.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. So yeah, what young people, first of all, thank you for having me on this session. Thanks to great insights from all of the panelists. I've learned from everyone today. It's been a good time, and then I'm happy to have been part of this conversation. I'm looking forward to driving the conversation further. To end this conversation, I think young people in Africa should clearly just make sure that they do the real work. Doing the real work helps you sustain relevance. Doing the real work helps you to actually impact your community positively. So as far as climate change is concerned, just energy transition, developmental issues, any initiative you're leading, make sure you do the real work in terms of make sure that your impact is really telling at a level that your national plan, as well as the regional and even the global agenda plan is being tied to, and then you're driving change at that level. That's what I'll say. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Damilola. Yes, so Olumide, can we have you in 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes, talk about what you think young people can do better? So what they need to watch out for, what's best way forward for those seeking climate justice? Olumide, are you still there?
Yes, I am here. I think Damilola have been repeating a lot about the role of young people. For me, you see, our role is to complement the effort of the government. And that is why you see a lot of young people doing a lot of impact work, innovation, creating different ideas. If only government can look into these innovations and ideas that young people are really working on, they can really turn around and serve as investment opportunity for the country, for the continent. And one thing again is that young people should not stop working. It is high time for us to, we call it more action, less talk. We need to take more action now, because action speaks very well to help us achieve what we are doing. And I also want to end by saying that young people should build on collaboration. Young people should come together and speak one voice, and to demand for the climate justice that we are talking about. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for talking about the necessity for young people to collaborate, and for them to collaborate with the government, and for them to be united, to have one voice, to be able to achieve the desired goal. So this brings us to the end of today's webinar. And I'm super, super excited to have you speakers. Like, you guys have really done justice to it. And, you know, this session has exposed us to various post-COP27 opportunities. And, you know, we've been able to share innovative ideas on them, on how to track and monitor the pledges made by the African leaders, basically, and also to participate, and for participants to know various ways of supporting climate actions, you know, and what Conference of Paris Agreement purpose was set for, the purpose of the conference, you know, and how our, basically what opportunities are there for the masses, for the youths, you know, and the role of the government, what everyone has to do, you know. And basically, I remember what Olumide mentioned something about vision. When there is vision, we know what next to do. Do you understand? And, you know, I will just end by saying that you guys have really done justice. Thank you so much, Fenny. Thank you, Damilola Balogun. I didn't miss your name this time. And thank you, Olumide Idowu. Unfortunately, we're not able to have Jean on the call. So I guess maybe something happened, you know, we'll talk about that later. And thank you so much, Mayowa. So my name remains Becca Akinrotimi. I'm so glad to have you all to moderate this call this afternoon. And I will just end on a note and say thank you to you all. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you, everyone that joined the call as well. Thank you, Mr. Sadiq, Kevin, Eniola, Shalom, Ibrahim, Eke, Mr. Manuel. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.